The next bad investor archetype is what I'm calling the predator, Chris. Now, the predator is someone who uses dirty tricks and effectively takes advantage of naive or desperate founders to secure an investment at terms that are very favorable to them, at least on the surface, and very unfavorable to those founders. There's some overlap with the midwit. The predator often sees that what they want to do is get a bargain, right? They want to get the biggest chunk of equity for the lowest possible price with all sorts of crazy things. Like they might even charge the founder fees for advice and goodness knows what, because they are basically seeing it as this sort of fairly simple zero-sum transaction, right? Where more for them means more for them. And ultimately, a bigger slice of the pie means they will get a bigger exit. And this one's really heartbreaking because it doesn't work that way. And again, Chris, we've talked about this on previous episodes of the podcast. A good relationship between early investors and founders is this delicate type of partnership where the shape of the cap table actually needs to be balanced. And this is not for some moral reason, but to keep incentives aligned. If founders lose too much control of their company, they're not going to build it into that amazing return that they have the potential to do, right? They will lose motivation, and even more so, they will fail to be able to attract interest from better investors in subsequent rounds, because those investors will look at the cap table that has been torn apart by the predator and they will run 100 miles in the other direction.
Yeah, you have to be a midwit investor to also be a predator investor, right? So it's like predators are subsets of midwits. So, but the case here is not only do they give bad advice and look for the wrong things and invest in the wrong companies, once they are lucky enough to get a deal worth doing, they're investing in the wrong way. Because as you said, they're transactional. They think the more they can take, the better it is for them. You touched on all of it already. We've talked about it many times on the show before, but just to put a very, very fine point on it, if you are a midwit investor and you are a predator, also a predator, and you're trying to take, 40% of the cap table, there's no chance that smart money will come in after you and invest in that company. And therefore, you're holding the bag on a shit sandwich because you're going to run out of capital and you will not get follow-on capital. No investor is going to invest in a company where you took 40%. It's not going to happen. Or you're going to get more dumb money on the cap table, and all you're going to be is a kind of a dumb money party of people looking around who don't know how to execute, operate, and invest and exit. You're breaking the cap table. You're breaking the incentives for the founder, because the founder, after a couple of rounds, is going to be diluted to hell and going to be demotivated. Chances are that that thing basically gets flown into the ground. The way I often put this is you have to invest as if you're already on the other side of the table, because the moment the money from your bank account hits their bank account, you're on their side of the table. And you look around, you're like, look at this shiny new company that I am now part of. Oh, shit. There's an idiot investor on the cap table that owns 40%, a non-operational shareholder who owns 40%. I just bought a piece of shit. And it's a piece of shit because you made it that way. So just remember, the moment your money hits the bank account, it's your piece of shit. So stop breaking it on the way in.
To those who are listening to this and thinking to themselves, that's not really how the world works, let me tell you it is. I advised a wonderful startup run by two incredible founders. The two founders, between them, had less than 20% of the company. And this is at the seed stage, because they'd actually spun out of another company. The investors took 80%. And guess what? They found it impossible to raise. They needed more capital, and every real VC looked at them and said, we can't invest in this. And so, the small role I played was in sort of helping these founders, I guess, make it clear that the cap table needed to be reconstituted so that this thing was actually investable. And that meant basically getting more equity than they had. Not for selfish reasons, or not only for selfish reasons, of course they wanted more equity, but because the company as it was literally uninvestable and was simply going to die. They seriously considered quitting their own startup that they had founded because the cap table was so screwed that they simply couldn't see a way forward. So predators, they're really killing the goose that lays the golden egg, and it's just a real tragedy when it happens.
I will tell one story, actually, which shines a really positive light on an investor I know, Danny Gilligan from Reinventure, where he bumped into a startup that was misorganized. Cap table was a disaster, and earlier investors had taken too much. And to his credit, he really liked the company, really liked the founder. He actually worked with them to reorganize the cap table and basically right-size the founder's piece. so that he could then invest at the appropriate amount and dilute the founder at the appropriate amount. Most investors will not take the time to do that. They will basically discount the founder. They'll discount the other investors. They don't want to be on a cap table with those investors. And they will just go, no, thank you. You guys obviously don't know what the hell you're talking about. And so, yep, watch out for the predator. Bad news.